today's meeting of the Detroit Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners to order, and let's call the roll.
Chairman Ihauser.
Present.
Vice Chair Blackman. Present. Commissioner Davis.
Present.
Commissioner Garcia.
President, Detroit, Michigan.
Commissioner Forte.
Present.
Commissioner Kinlaw.
Present. Detroit, Arden.
Commissioner Coleman is absent. Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. Next is we have the approval of our agenda for today. Is there a motion?
Move, Mr. Chair.
Been moved. Support. And seconded. Any changes to the agenda, corrections, or additions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And that is adopted. Next, the approval of the minutes of July 21st. Yes, Commissioner Kinlaw.
Move approval of the meeting minutes with any necessary corrections, Mr. Chair.
All right, it has been moved and it has been seconded. Any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And that is adopted. Next, we get to public comments, and I'm not sure technologically how we're handling public comments today.
In person, Mr. Chair. Anyone that's in person?
Oh, they're here in person?
It has to be in person.
Okay.
They have to be in person.
All right. Is there any member of the public that would like to address the Board of Commissioners?
There's some down.
Come forward, please.
Oh, no.
There's some in the line. So what are they doing?
We're gonna check it out.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, it appears that we have a few great, community people that were probably coming to speak. I don't know if you maybe want to come back to that portion. All right, we're gonna sit someone down to make sure they get out as quickly as possible.
All right, then we'll put that aside and return to it. Are there any items to come from the commissioners?
It's coming in now.
All right, then we'll return to public comment. Anybody who wishes to comment before the board, we ask you to come down to the podium one at a time to the extent we can maintain our social distancing.
Okay, we ask them to please speak into the microphone. Speak into the microphone. I see that it's raised up, we'll have it pulled down for the whole thing. In order for our colleagues to be able to hear us online, you need to speak directly into the microphone.
All right, anybody who'd like to address the commission, please come forward. Let us know your name and where you live and what's on your mind.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Sheila George. I have a question. Oh, it's my, okay, I need to talk.
Thank you.
You're welcome. One of my concerns, first of all, go to the commissioners and our board chair. I'm kind of concerned with us paying our water bill every month, and the other day, Great Lakes Water Authority, somebody is driving this Great Lakes Water Authority campus off the neighborhood to file for claims that's 45 days past due. I filed for claims a few weeks ago under the board. And my concern is we pay the water bill. I'm on the calls with the Great Lakes Water Board, and another meeting was canceled because last week we were having technical difficulties. make sure we're gonna be on that call next week, but FEMA denied the claim that I filed, because they told us to file for a business loan. We're not gonna file for the loan. Because the mayor is advertising this too, but when Dearborn is $1 million in grants that was in New York Times. That's a discrimination, and I'll take care of that under the FEMA. The issue is we're paying money here. Who takes the onerous of the issues with the wastewater? Now, as a nurse, I know that COVID-19 is in pieces. You see the studies I was saying last year. So my issue is that in our homes, we have a hole in our basement with wastewater in the basement, with sewage lines coming up. Somebody needs to be responsible. I'm not going to try to call the national news just yet, because I got to go to DC this week tomorrow to DC for the downloads bill. But my issue is going to address that. So I just would like to know if the Great Lakes Water sent this knowledge or support next week to file a claim for this past 45 days. We got denied with Detroit and sewage. I got denied with FEMA. And I will address FEMA as well, and write the president, because we're not going to have disparities with Dearborn getting millions of dollars, and the mayor telling us to get small business loans for what? Dearborn needs small business loans because we're a black city. We're not going to tolerate it. We're going to make sure this is going to be a national voice on this. So I just want to say, I don't know if you want to do that. Great Lakes Water Authority was one of the neighborhoods to talk about campuses past due to file for a complaint. So, and I always said, and I know Mr. Brown knows this, but I'm always open when I get a chance to be on call when I'm not working. Just like Anthony Adams said in the Maryland Academy, we need to get our water back. This was done through Governor Snyder. He messed up with Flint, harming people with the Flint water, and here we still own our water. Everybody, just a disparity. So I have an issue with that, but I'll take that up on a national level. So that's my.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of points. I checked this morning, and so far FEMA has paid out $58 million to Detroiters that have filed claims. And I sat through some of their briefings to the community. And while it's called a small business loan, they gave $38 million in loans to homeowners in conjunction with the $58 million that they paid out so far. And so I just want to reiterate that our customers still have claims in with DWSD, they still have claims in with the Great Lakes Water Authority, and we hope they also make a claim with an insurance company if it's applicable. And so those claims are still live, and I just, I know how difficult it is to lose $6,000 or $8,000 worth of your belongings and only be paid $3,000. That's disheartening. I know that. But I don't want anybody to walk away thinking that in less than 8 weeks, FEMA came to town and has already written checks for $58 million to Detroiters to try to make their homes safe. And so it's not over with yet. Still, the claims are live for UWSD and Great Lakes Water Authority. And we're just asking people to be patient and let us work through this process, and we'll see what happens.
Can I make a quick comment? Thank you, Mr. Brown, for that. But as a nurse, I'm wearing a mask in my basement. It's wastewater. It has nothing to say. So, and my friend, he has almost $20,000. FEMA did not come in everybody's home. So, you said the law for Dearborn got millions of dollars, like I stated in the New York Times. So I'm hoping I can advocate for us by marching down the Capitol one tomorrow for this week with the Dr. King March for the National Church Network. So my issue is that it's a disparity. Dearborn did not get loans, so that's my issue. And like I said, it's a public health crisis. I was on a call with the Great Lakes Water Authority where the lady lost $19,000, and they're having health issues. And it starts at the mayor. I'm not just blaming you all, it's the mayor level. So we will deal with that, and whatever help I can get nationally this weekend, I'm going to try to do it. It's very shocking for anybody to hone in on what's happening here, and not just to all this FEMA. It's a collaborative issue, and as a nurse who's been on the front lines with COVID-19, it's unheard of. It's unheard of. So That's the only thing I want to comment on. They didn't tell Dearborn to do a small business law. And the mayor is advocating for this. I can't even get through his phone. So that's all I want to say.
All right, thank you very much. Michelle George?
That was me.
Oh, okay. You're first in line. ML Albert? And anybody who would like to address the board, we'd appreciate it if you'd fill out a comment card that can be brought up. Mr. Albert, how are you? Oh, you're not there yet. I have a hard time seeing through this damn thing.
You did a clear.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board and to ask some questions around the minds of most of us who have suffered flooding. Last time I was here, Director Brown said there were 30,000 claims filed against Detroit Water and Sewage Department, so clearly I may be here by myself, but there are many other people who stand behind me who I represent. I have some questions that come out of a report that was submitted to DWSD itself in 2017 that say, under future actions, a line that I think sums it up very nicely. Clearly, the frequency and severity of basement backups experienced on the east side of Detroit are not acceptable. I couldn't say that any better myself. And some of the recommendations made by the engineering firm that was hired by the water department included alarms that could go off when a rain gauge in the tributary area registered for a certain amount of rain. I'd like to know why those alarms were not installed. I've heard that the time of the rain may not have been convenient for alerting people, but I will tell you those of us who lost a lot of property may have saved some of it if we had been given some sort of warning. I've talked before when I came here about the need for backflow preventers and sump pumps. This report indicates that this is not a revelation to water department officials, that the engineering firm that the water department itself hired called for the same thing. I've also called for green infrastructure, and I see, I'm quoting from the report again, significant open spaces available for stormwater management. The alternative can be utilized to substantially decrease the probability of a storm event exceeding the system capacity. We've heard that the system can't handle storms like that. 4 years ago, the department was told we need to do something about that. I'd like to know what measures were taken. As far as we can tell, none were taken. We'd like to know why that happened. Damage reduction measures, including installing backwater valves on residential sanitary connections, would help prevent property damage in case of backup. An important advantage of this alternative can work to prevent sewer backups, regardless of the size of the rain. This is from the report that the department itself commissioned and was delivered to the department more than 4 years ago. I'd like to know what action was taken and why no action was taken, because that's what it appears to us. I see my time is running short. Let me just conclude with what the report concluded. That backwater valves and other preventative measures should be provided to those of us who live in the areas served by the concrete and the fruit pumping stations. This should not have happened. It cannot happen again. We deserve answers. We deserve action. And I look forward to hearing from you as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kimberly Grant?
You can lean into the mic so that you
I will, I'll just go with the mic.
Yep.
No problem. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Graham.
Good afternoon. I wrote everything down in these less than 3 minutes. So, my name is Kimberly Brown, and I am first a God-fearing woman and an employee of DWSD, and I've been a citizen in the city of Detroit for 61 years. I'm here to address hazard pay for the employees of DWSD. I work in the maintenance and repair department. We have lost employees to COVID. We have to have direct contact with the public. Currently, we're on mandatory overtime addressing water in the basements. DWSD has never considered hazard pay for the employees, and yet we continue to promote management positions. If you look closely, you will see that DWSD is very top-heavy and has been this way for a long time. The department has lost a lot of knowledgeable employees because of not paying wages that are competitive with other municipalities. Someone needs to pay closer attention to day-to-day operations. The hiring techniques are based on who you know and not what you know. This department is based on big eyes and little U's. There are employees who have been here through storms and now a pandemic. We can't work from home. Our job is to service the citizens of Detroit. We have to be on the front line every day. But what's not recognized is that we also have families at home. And they that need and depend on us too. The employees of DWSD have worked from 2020 and more than half of 2021. This department recognized us as essential workers, but we've never been compensated. There were funds that were allocated for essential workers. I lost my baby brother to COVID, and it was devastating. But I still had to get up every day and come to work. I don't have a problem with that. But I do know that other municipalities compensate their employees. We have direct contact with the public every day. It's been made very clear that we will not shut down. And we need to recognize the people that come to work every day and make sure that this department runs smoothly. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, first of all, let me thank you, Ms. Martin, for your dedication to the citizens of Detroit as a member of DWSD. And I couldn't agree with you more with just about everything that you said. I've made it pretty clear to the executive team that I believe that the VIPs of this organization are the men and women that are out there working in inclement weather, holidays, day and night, to service the citizens of the city of Detroit, and I expect that they need to be treated as VIPs of the organization. With that said, I've also, in many employee meetings, made it clear that there are things that I can change unilaterally, and there are things that have to be negotiated through union contracts that I can't change unilaterally. But I'm certainly going to take everything that you said into consideration and try to make sure that the next time that you do come here, that you do understand that you're working in a department of this department that should be treated as the VIPs of the organization. Because you're not a support unit, you're out there on the front line. They haven't gone unnoticed, and we're going to try. I'm going to try my best to make sure everybody in your position understands that.
Thank you, sir. I know that there are union negotiations, but I think we're all aware that voter suppression is real. And without going through the contract negotiations, we need to have, the city of Detroit should have the presidential election off every 4 years. We used to. When we got Republican governor, things changed. We need to have the presidential election off every 4 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. And condolences about your brother. There's so many sad stories coming out of this pandemic. Deborah Martin. Commissioner Blunt.
I think you're going to be quite clear that we're going to be looking to whatever it is that we do to our employees. And so I'm looking forward to having that discussion in the appropriate forum.
I just want to piggyback on that because there, as you know, a lot of conversation around people's pay, and she makes a great point. There's been really no conversation that relates to public water department workers. And so I know this conversation is taking place because, we're having them as it relates to the nursing home and some of the hospital workers. So that someone needs to be at the table champion for public waterworks employees. I'll wait to finish my Thank you.
Ms. Martin?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Deborah Martin. I'm a native Detroiter. The property that I'm here about today is not my, I don't live there, but it became my property when my father died 5 years ago. So he had the water included in the rent, and I kept it that way. But this past year, there's been a lot of things going on. My mom passed from COVID, and my son was in a terrible car accident around the time that this real high bill came. So I want to tell you what the usage is from the beginning of the year on. In January, it's $80. I called and got a report to make sure I wasn't going crazy or something. And in February, it was $100. In March, it was $100. In April, it was $800. Now, after April, it went back down. May, it was $100. 6, June, it was $100. And August, it was $100. So I'm not crazy. I knew something was wrong when it's $800 in 1 month. What happened in April is the fire hydrant across the street from the property was open, and the water was running for like almost a whole month, maybe 3 weeks. And I'm thinking that somehow they put that on my bill for that property, because obviously the usage is normally like nowhere more than 100. So I'm wondering, is there some way that I can have somebody do some investigation to figure out why would it be so high in the month that fire hydrant was also just flooding the whole street? Because the tenants do not use that kind of water. And I called and made sure. Now in April, I have to say that, like I said, my mom had just died and my son was in a terrible accident, so I had to fly to town. Because they told me when I called, oh, why'd you wait so late? I mean, it's been just a horrible year for me, just as far as, people being sick in my family, because I'm like that one that takes care of everything. So it didn't come to my attention until I got this bill for $1,300, and I was like, wait a minute, something's wrong. So immediately, because I was out of town, I paid $500 on it, but I was like, I gotta look into this and find out what this really happened. So, what do I do?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if we get your address, if we don't have it on your card, and we will send someone out to pull the meter. There's absolutely no correlation between the fire hydrant and the water that has to go through a meter to be read. So if there's something amiss, it doesn't have anything to do with the fire hydrant running, but it could be a meter issue. We'd like to come out and pull the meter off, have it inspected, and then make the appropriate adjustment. We will get your address, give you a call, and make arrangements to get that done.
My phone number's on there. The address is the tenant address, but that's where you be going out to. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. I don't have any other comments. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address the board?
Commissioner Wiersbe, we do have one more.
You have one more?
Yes.
Okay.
Requires an interpreter, so he's getting someone on the phone.
Mr. Chair, I was asked to respond to the 2017 investigation that I think Mr. M.L. Early addressed, and I just wanted to say at this particular time, given the facts that there's litigation, class action lawsuit involving this issue, these homeowners, that I think it would be best that we address it at the end of the investigation as opposed to trying to do it today.
All right.
And we will get board members a copy of that report that was referred to, in case you have other questions or concerns.
Afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Can you tell us your name and where you live?
I am Dan Abdurrahman as well. I live in Al-Shadir 6761. Al-Shadir, Detroit Street. I am sorry, I am no speak English good. I have friends translate for me. Can you translate for me?
Can I speak on that?
Hello? Yes, you're addressing the Board of Water Commissioners. Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, can I suggest that if one of my staff members could pull him aside and get the information and then come back and, read it into the record so that the board members that are on the telephone can be sure to hear the information. I don't think we're going to be able to do it by holding a telephone up to the microphone. So, one of my staff members could assist him. We're going to give the telephone number and deal with that directly, okay? All right. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? All right, I see none. So we will close our portion of public comment, and we will move on. Are there any items from commissioners? I see none. So we'll move on to item 7, communications. First, the receipt of correspondence. And I don't know if this needs any report, but a motion to receive and file is in order.
Chair, move to receive and file, Mr. Chair, move to receive and file correspondence under item A and B.
All right, and is there support? There is a motion to receive and file correspondence regarding mobile and regarding our FOI requests that we received monthly. Any discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And that is adopted. We have no unfinished business. We do have the consent agenda, and these are several items regarding the approval of contracts or purchases. Items 9A through I. Is there any commissioners wish to remove any of these items from the consent agenda to be considered separately? All right, I'm hearing none. So motion is in order to adopt the consent agenda. Commissioner Rock.
I move to the consent agenda as presented.
And is there support? Support. It's been moved, it's been supported. Any discussion on the adoption of items A through I on the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, we just like to comment that we did go to committee, and the discussion will take place during the committee process on all these items.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adoption, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And the consent agenda is adopted. So we now move to new business. And the first item is the Great Lakes Water Authority collection system overview.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of Water Commissioners for the City of Detroit Water and Sewage Department authorize the Director to approve change order number 4 to...
Still on A.
Also, no, A, okay. look similar to that.
Correct.
Okay, just a preview. Thank you. I mean, presentation.
Once again, I'm going to ask our director who serves on the board of the Great Lakes Water Authority to make the appropriate introductions. Welcome back.
I think we have our interim director, Ms. Sue Coffey, who we thank her for her patience in coming back, not once, not twice, but third time. We hope to get it right this time. And she'll probably open it up and then turn it over to CFO. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, honorable commissioners. I'm so happy to be here this afternoon to introduce myself to you. My name is Susanna Coffey.
Could you please adjust your microphone? I'm having trouble here.
Let me try this. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Suzanne Coffey, and I am the interim chief executive officer for the Great Lakes Water Authority. I have been in this position for about 2 weeks now, and I'm happy to be able to be in front of you. I know you had asked, or there had been a request for us to introduce or talk about how the wastewater collection system works on the regional side. And I am here today with our chief operating officer of wastewater. He's going to spend some time walking through some slides to get a good understanding of how wastewater flows through the system. So thank you for having me. It certainly is an honor.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you for having us today. We're actually very excited to do these type of presentations because it allows us an opportunity to show and explain the complexity of the regional system and the details of how the system works, help the community and also our member partners understand that complexity. So to start off, I think it's important to kind of go back and look at where the system started. So and because City of Detroit and the regional system are so integrated and the regional system started as part of that City of Detroit system, it's important to see where we started from. So in 1840, a small portion of the collection system was constructed, and approximately every 20 years, and I'll just flip through a couple slides here, the system continued to expand. So over close to 100 years is where the foundation of this sewer system started. And it continued to grow and became this spider web of an underground network of sewers that are operated on a daily basis to collect sanitary flow and some stormwater. And that was the intent of this system when it was constructed. So, and during the same time, a number of assets were constructed. Some large interceptors, the water resource recovery facility, which is the treatment plant, number of pump stations, what we refer to as lift stations, that were installed to be able to lift the wastewater from low-lying sewers to a higher sewer so that it can continue gravity and make it to the treatment facility. And this is where we are. So over 140 years, we have a significant network of sewer systems within the City of Detroit, boundaries. But then, as part of the transition in 2016, the systems were separated. They were separated to allow the best customer service that can be provided for our member partners and for the residents of the City of Detroit. So what that allows is that GLWA can focus on the regional system, the large assets that service our member partners and also services the City of Detroit as well, and allow City of Detroit, EWSD, to be able to focus on the residents and front-facing the customers of Detroit. So the map before you is really the extent of the regional system. I know it's very difficult to see, but you can see that it's not as complex as the map you saw before with the small retail sewers, what we refer to as, which is servicing directly the resident. And these sewers are large, ranging between 3 feet to 16 feet in diameter, that collect wastewater and some stormwater from the area, from the tributary areas. So, the regional system. We service, the blue boundary references the outskirts and the total tributary area to the regional assets. Our system is broken up and it services about approximately 944 square miles. We service about 2.8 million residents. We do that through 19 member partners and across 79 communities. We operate 8 combined sewer overflow facilities, and I'll get into the details of that in a minute. We convey to the water resource recovery facility all the flow that we receive through 3 major interceptors. I'll talk about that in detail. And 9 sanitary lift stations. The lift stations are broken up where 5 of those lift stations provide service to the region. So they are servicing both City of Detroit and member partners. But there are 4 dedicated stations that service City of Detroit that we operate for EWSD under our shared service agreement. So part of our system is there's a good significant portion of our system that is separated, about 79%. 24% of that, and you can kind of see that in the hatching of this map, is a combined system, meaning that your catch basins are connected to your sanitary system, and where the sanitary waste and the catch basins, the stormwater combine into one pipe and convey to the regional asset and then work its way down to the water resource recovery facility. A point of fact
Mr. Chair, could I ask the person for reference to call I can speak from? That would be helpful.
Yes, I can. So this is slide number 14. And as a point of reference, 80% of the wet weather that we experience comes from the combined sewer. So even though it's 24% of the geographical area, it's about 80% of the wet weather that we treat through our facilities, so about 46 billion gallons, just for reference of how much wet weather we manage. That is a large amount of water. So, to get into the details of the regional system, we operate, as I indicated, 3 major interceptors. On the west region, we operate the Northwest Interceptor. We operate the NIEA, which is referred to as the Northeast Interceptor arm, and then the Detroit River Interceptor. And I'll get into the details on the next slide of what specifically tributary to each one of those interceptors. So, the complexity of the regional system. We operate 9 system valves. These valves open and close to allow us to maximize the use of our assets. So if we have to be able to move water from one side to another, or be able to retain water as necessary to be able to do maintenance, and or be able to manage wet weather. So during the storms, we make sure that we hold water back where we need to be able to maximize the flow in the pipes and utilize all the assets and the features within the system. In addition to that, we have in-system storage dams. They function similarly where they're similar to a big balloon that are within the sewer pipes that blow up, and they basically allow for water to back up within the pipe upstream of that to be able to protect downstream and or be able to maximize the flow within the pipe. We have 3 screening and disinfection facilities. These disinfection facilities allow for quick, rapid flow through them. So as rain events increase, where water resource recovery facility has exceeded its capacity, we start discharging through a number of locations within our system, and we want to make sure that we maintain water quality. So they allow screening where we remove floatables, and then provide disinfection material to be able to make sure we get the bacteria killed before discharging to the receiving water bodies. And similar to the screening disinfection facility, we operate retention basins. These basins have capacities to be able to store water, and then after those volumes of water have been exceeded, they're capable of also providing screening and disinfection prior to discharging to the receiving water bodies. And on top of that, we have a number of outfalls throughout the system, both discharged on the roof side of the system and also on the Detroit River side, where if the system exceeds the water resources recovery facility, exceeds our treatment facilities, we have passive reliefs, which are basically pipes that discharge into the water bodies to be able to relieve the stress on the system. And in addition to all the assets that we are operating under regional, many of our member partners have also their few assets, which are a number of pump stations, number of retention basins, equalization basins, where they store wet weather flows, rain events, allowing the system to be able to receive and then where they discharge back into the system. So it's not just us, we also work in conjunction with a larger network of assets that are operated by our member partners. So now we'll talk about how flow works. So the Northwest Interceptor Arm receives flow from City of Farmington, portions of Redford Township, Wayne County, Dearborn, and I'm on slide number 23, I apologize for the people that are following. Portions of Dearborn, Allen Park, Melvindale, and then small portions of Highland Park. The larger portion of Highland Park. These are the communities that are tributary to the Northwest Interceptor, and a large portion of City of Detroit West Side is tributary to the Northwest Interceptor. And I'll talk more about the complexity that comes with that when we get into the wet weather discussion. On the Northeast Interceptor arm, most of the Northeast Interceptor is a drier system because it receives most of the flow from our separated communities and a small portion of combined. So Oakland County, portions of Oakland County come into the NIA. OMID, which is our Macomb County interceptor that comes into the Northeast pump station, which then conveys flow into the Northeast interceptor arm. Small portions of Highland Park and Hamtramck, and a small portion of the central City of Detroit that is tributary to the Northeast Interceptor arm. And then finally, the Detroit River Interceptor. This sewer runs along the Jefferson, and this collects flow from Centerline, Harbor Woods, Wayne County, Northeast, the Grosse Points, Hamtramck, and Detroit River Interceptor, and a large portion of the east side of Detroit and central Detroit. So now we get into wet weather, and this is, I think, where things really come to, specifically to all the discussions that have taken place today. So as the flows under dry flows flow into the interceptor, as we start experiencing rain events, the water resource recovery facility, which it's kind of hard to see, but it's at the bottom. If you can see my cursor, so the water resource recovery facility is at the bottom of all these interceptors. So at the end of the pipe, they all flow to the water resource recovery facility on the normal flows, where we provide full treatment, activated sludge process, and then discharged into either the Detroit River or the Rouge River, depending on the flows that are received. As the flows begin to increase, the water resource recovery facility increases its flow until it reaches 1,700 MGD. In addition to that, our wet weather facilities come online at that point. On the west side, we have the 7 Mile RTB, we have the Puritan Finkel RTB, the Hull Southfield RTB, and the Oakwood RTB. In addition to that, we have the Baby Creek screening and disinfection facility. So now the rain continues to increase and those facilities max out and they begin to discharge, providing treatment and discharging to our receiving bodies. After those facilities have exceeded their capacities or combined with those facilities exceeding their capacities, the passive systems, which is the untreated discharge points, will begin to discharge to the Rouge River. What's important to recognize on the west side is it is a gravity system. If you notice, I didn't talk much about pump stations, I didn't talk about many lifting points. Because we are very dependent on the west side of the levels of water in the Rouge, most of our facilities that I just referenced are very passive. Passive means they gravity out into the Rouge River. So as the water levels rise in the Rouge, the less water we can put into the Rouge. And that's the restriction that we experience on the west side of things. So it is very connected with the water surface levels that are in within the Rouge itself. And one thing to recognize, over the last 2 years, we have been at river levels above 100-year elevation. So we are at abnormal river levels, and I know this board knows about it because of all the water that was coming in from the east side into the collection system over the last couple of years. So, to get to the midpoint, the northeast arm collects flow through the counties that I described. As the flows increase, the leaves screening disinfection facility comes online, and as I referenced, this is our least wet sewer. So we don't anticipate that same level of wet weather facilities that we have along the northwest arm and the Detroit River arm that I'm talking about. So the lead service is the only screening disinfection wet weather treatment facility that we have on the NIE. And then in addition to that, it's capable, many of those sewers are capable to relieve themselves through the number of outfalls that we have along the Detroit River interceptor. And again, these are passive, so that means that they are just basically pipes. After the flows exceed the capacity of the large interceptor, the flow can continue out and go directly to the Detroit River. And then finally on the east side, the Detroit River interceptor. As the flows begin to rise, we have the concrete RTB. This has been in a lot of discussions today. And I'll talk specifically on the east side and how it works. But the concrete CSO is fed by 3 major conduits. 2 of those conduits are pump stations, meaning there's low sewers, we lift the flow up, and we put the flow into the concrete basin. And that is the services that are provided by Fruit and Connor Pump Station. The third conduit that comes into the concrete CSO is a gravity sewer, which is the Connor Creek enclosure we refer to. And that flows as gravity, similar to the west side as I described, which is restricted by the level of the Detroit River. So it will flow passively through the pipe, through gravity, into the RTB, the Connor Creek RTB, and then discharges into the Detroit River. In addition to that, we operate the Belle Isle facility. This is a smaller facility of ours that just services Belle Isle during wet weather, because that island is a combined system. We have the lead facility, which is all gravity out. St. Albans, similar, gravity out, provide treatment, and then the water resource recovery facility, and then finally the passive systems. So it's a very complex system. As the water levels, and when we talk about bathtubs, we really look at every one of our scenarios as a bathtub. As the waters continue to rise, each one of these assets come online and provide service. So first the water resource recovery fills up to its max capacity, then our treatment facilities come up to their capacity, then our passive outfalls come up to their capacity. And unfortunately, the levels in the river, both in the Detroit River and Rouge River, play a factor in many of our facilities and how they operate. So getting into that east side system, as I referred to, getting into the details of it. So the orange on the far right, which I said the northeast plane, flows through a network of pump stations and conduits that are owned by Wayne County, and it's also going to be through and operated by the Northeast Macomb Switch District. That flows through and then collects a number of gross points, Grosse Pointe Farms, Grosse Pointe City of Grosse Pointe, and all of that flow goes through what we refer to as the Fox Creek enclosure, and that's a Wayne County sewer. After that Fox Creek enclosure, we have a connection to the regional system at that point, and that is where it connects into the GLW regional system.
For the presenter to actually, use the pointer.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that. So, as I was referring to, so we have a number of conduits up here that is operated by the Southeast Macomb Sewer District. Continues through, there's pump stations, as you can see, that lift flow and place them into the Fox Creek enclosure. And it continues on where it collects flow from Grosse Pointe Farms and City of Grosse Pointe. And then at this red point is where it actually, in this area, is where it connects into the regional system. And then subsequently, Grosse Pointe Park pumps into the Detroit River Interceptor, which comes into that bathtub, which is serviced by the Conner Creek facility. So as the flow continues through during dry weather, everything comes into what is our third pump station that I can now refer to, which is Fairview. Fairview pump station takes flow from all these tributary areas, lifts it into the Detroit River Interceptor, and then gravity flows down to the Water Resource Recovery Facility. When wet weather comes into operations, all this flow ends up going into the Conner Creek pump station, and then from there it gets lifted into the Conner Creek RTB and then discharged into the Detroit River. This area right here that's in tan and this area in beige, similarly during dry weather flow, all this flow goes into our Fairview pump station. However, during wet weather pump, this goes into the bathtub, which is serviced by the Fruit pump station and the Fruit and Conner pump station, where subsequently, which allows that flow to go through the RTB and out. Finally, the Conner Creek enclosure, which is the gravity sewer I referred to, collects flow from the center line and collects flow from this pink area of the region. This all gravity flows directly through the Conner Creek CSO facility. This does not go to, during dry weather flow, it goes through the Fairview pump station. During wet weather flow, it goes directly out through the Conner Creek basin. It does not go through the two pump stations. So finally, what I wanted to talk a little bit about was a project that is being proposed under the, to provide an opportunity by Macomb to allow for maintenance. So the current line that I indicated, the northeast interceptor arm, runs along, as indicated in the orange line. And then the blue line is operated by OMIT, Open Macomb Interceptor District. As part of a project to be able to rehab this blue line, the request is to be able to install gates so that flows could be diverted through the several-mile sewer under dry weather conditions only, so that access can be made into the interceptor to make sure that the integrity and the health of that pipe is safe enough so that we don't have potential future collapses. During wet weather, these gates are put back into normal conditions where the flow will continue down its normal path through the blue line into the orange line into the treatment facility and or the wet weather facilities that I described earlier on. I think there was some conversation of why we have these gates to be automated. That automation will allow us that rapid response. So we commonly try to divert flow for the safety of the inspectors that are within the pipe and to be able to provide a good working conditions for individuals in the sewer to be able to inspect and repair the sewer. So that diversion allows that flow to be reduced to a point where it is safe for people to work in. But then as we go into wet weather, we're able to automatically convert the flows, close and open gates so that flows can return back to normal conditions and team members and or individuals that are working in the sewer can safely exit the sewer and be able to continue work after the break. So that is what I have. I'm available for questions. I know that was a lot. It is a complex system, but I'll go back to this level so that you can ask any questions.
Commissioner Michael.
Could you speak more directly to the challenges with these last few extreme weather conditions that cause problems?
Absolutely. So most of the challenges that was extreme. So first, the intensity and the amount of rain that we received. As I indicated, the sewer system and most sewer systems are designed to a rain event. Most of the combined sewer systems are designed for a 10-year blackout. They are not designed to carry 8 inches of rain that was experienced in many of our, within many of our tributary area. So one of the first points to recognize is the intensity and the volume of water that comes in. As I indicated, the water rises. The normal rain events, water rise at a manageable rate. But when we get intensities that large, it becomes basically a simple bottleneck. There's just too much rain to convey at one time within a collection system, and the system wasn't designed to carry that much water at a given time that quickly. So that is the foundational problem of the challenges that we have experienced. The second thing that I want to say that we did experience, as we have indicated, some external power issues that limited the amount of water that could be lifted. So if I can go back to this map here, the complexity of the through and counter pump stations that has been on the topic services this region. The gravity system that leaves the counter pump station or the Counter Creek CSO facility is this pink area. This facility had nothing to do with the restrictions that was experienced from the power outage, right? However, there was still a lot of backups that was experienced. And that's the point that I'm making, that the intensity of that rainstorm overwhelms the system because it exceeds what it was designed for. So many of the challenges, it really goes back to that foundational question. However, the external power issues that was experienced are to the beige and the yellow and the tributary areas that I showed on the right side.
If I may, so based on what you're telling us, were there any measures taken? This is not just the second significant event that happened this week. So were there any significant measures taken? Were there any failures that could have been prevented in your opinion?
So this is in reference to between the June 25th event and July 16th. Is that what is the reference?
Yes.
So as it relates to the differences between those two events, on the June 25th event, we experienced an external power issue. On the July event, we did not have that issue at the food pump station. We were able to maintain levels well below flooding levels within the regional system. The experience that we had, the challenge that we experienced during the July 16th event was isolated just to the Blue Hill pump station only. The Blue Hill pump station, and if I can, for this board, Blue Hill Pump Station is a smaller tributary area. If you can follow my cursor, it's a smaller area that just services this region. This is the Cornerstone area. This is potentially a portion of East English Village. That is the July 16th that we are investigating. And if I could share with this board, we'll just blow this up for reference. The July 16th event, the entire regional system operated as designed. So through Connor, they came online, they were able to maintain levels below flooding levels. This is the Blue Hill tributary area. Sorry. This is slide 35. Is people on virtual platform unable to see?
Correct. The commissioners are on the phone, correct? So they can't see the presentation, correct?
They can follow it.
They can
In
follow
the packet.
it in their packet.
I
So
see the presentation. I see the presentation. I just have, I've had to really get through to find the,
so to say the page number would be helpful.
Okay, this is page 35. Unfortunately, this wasn't part of the slide deck, but I thought this question would come up, so I wanted to provide a reference because it's not necessarily information that it's not clear enough to be able to share. We have some discrepancies. We are out investigating the sewers to make sure that we understand interconnections. But the Blue Hill Pump Station, which was the challenge because of another external power issue that was experienced at the Blue Hill Pump Station, was a smaller tributary area to our, with reference to the regional system, which was, as I indicated, the Cornerstone region and small portions of what we could be English Village.
Yeah, so on slide 32, I am able to see where the Blue Hill pump station is, and I'm able to get a sense of what I'm speaking to. I do want to have a question based on a comment that we made earlier, which was obviously in response to Commissioner Blackman's question, and he spoke to the intensity, which was the fundamental foundational impact of the rains, and that was the foundation of cause. I'm asking a question, I know it's hypothetical, but had the power failure been non-existent, had there been no power failure, would it have been possible for the system to have navigated and managed through the intensity of the rain?
Yeah. So we are in the after action review of, as part of our investigation, we will run models which will give us an exact prediction of what the system would have been able to do if we had no power outage issues. But to the level of design of the system, we do believe that no matter what, there would have been flooding within the system. Suzanne, yeah.
So Suzanne, I just want to add to this. It's a really important question, right? This is a question that's on everyone's mind, right? So let me talk a little bit about their internet, and I did a very nice job. When you talk about the intensity of this event that we designed the system for, and our assets are like 100-year assets, right? You build some these pipes last 7,500 years. The design target is 1.7 inches of rain in 1 hour. No rain before that, no rain after that. On that day, on June 25th, in the evening, we had 2 bursts of rain that after about 6 o'clock, before say 11, that were totaling about 1 inch of rain. And then around 11 to 2, we had 6.5 more inches. So the system was already partially full. It only takes 12 hours for flow through the system. You see how large that is, right? Partially full. And then we get another 6.5 inches. So when I talk about the regional system in this way, the local systems are also designed this way. This is our regulatory design target. And so when we designed for this 1.7 inches of rain. I think the question at this point is, where do we go from here? Right? From my perspective, I was the chief learning officer at Joe before I took this interim chief executive officer role. we as a region need to come together and talk about levels of service. It's not just that climate change is real. Climate change is here. We are experiencing it, right? So what are we going to decide to do next? You know, it is really important for us to do the after action investigation. It is very important that our assets all operate the way that they were designed, that we have the power grids pumped around. One big question that the region needs to come together and answer is, what are we designing to next? So the public health can be protected against the climate change we're experiencing. So that's a big question. And that's the question that GLWA is working with regional partners to start to answer. With your folks, your chief operating officer, your chief engineer, others, we have meetings with those points. We're working toward what is the new design target. Not that we can flip a switch and change everything, but we've got to do something, right? So we've got to change. So I just wanted to throw it in because I thought it was really important in Germany. So thank you for indulging with that.
Commissioner Pickle.
You know, that's pretty much what I was going to initially talk about, because we have heard over the past month all of the various reasons that had caused these floods into people's homes: the power issue, the volume of water, the water levels at Rouge and the Detroit River. But what I have been told as I'm talking to residents and what I'm reading is that before this June 25th, as well as July water events, that many of these communities consistently have had backups. They've had backups, specifically on when you talk about on the east side. Now we come to the point where we are now dealing with the issues that have come from the June 25th and the July water event. And we know that we have to have a long-term plan, because that's only the most responsible thing to do. But how do we most immediately address these wet water events that may not be at the same level of what we saw occurring in the wee hours of the June 25th water event? But what can we do to assure our residents that these other events, water events, that have flooded basements, that we're taking measures and putting forth recommendations and resources to those residents, specifically on that east side, I know as well as in Dearborn, but what are we doing to immediately prevent us from getting phone calls that my basement, that a few hundred residents' basements have gotten flooded, and I'm sure that you all gotten those same calls.
Absolutely, so it's tragic, right? This is tragic. I can't stress that enough. It's absolutely tragic. So what can we do? The first thing that we can do is communicate severe weather events, and we're doing that. I think the other piece is we need to make sure that we have reliable external power, right? And we're having multiple meetings a week with DTE. We talk to our energy service providers. What can we do? We have the best minds in the room saying, what can we do to make sure we have absolutely the best redundancy from a power perspective, and making sure all those pumps run, right? So those types of things we're working through now. I can tell you that we're spending extraordinary amounts of time, as we should, to make sure that our equipment is prepared to run when the rains come. Notify the residents, that's important. So the rest of the work is brainstorming around how it is that we plan in short term, medium term, and long term. What could we do right now that's more than making sure our equipment runs? Those are the types of things the engineers are working through now to try to figure out how we address that. And that's really the local system too, because the local system is designed to the same design target. So in that respect, we're all in the same boat, right? The pipes are only so big. So even if we were able to flip some switch at regional system, the local system still have to be able to get the flow to us, so it doesn't matter at the home. I like the idea of the backflow prevention devices. I like the idea of sump pumps. I think those are all good things. Cleaning catch basins, making sure your downspouts are pushing water away from your home. Those are all good things. Watching the weather is good. There is a risk. And Mother Nature can throw us a bigger storm, but we don't know where the end of that is. So can't tell you there's no risk. I certainly wouldn't do that. So be diligent, watch, and we're diligent and we're on the job too, so we're going to do what we can every step of the way to prevent this. We understand it's tragic.
Commissioner Biden.
So comment on
what interim, Director Suzanne Coffey just said, I want to echo with respect to backflow prevention devices with sump pumps, that those are typically private property interventions. Those are not things that are done by a water or sewer utility. And so we understand, we know who our customers are. We know our customers are economically disadvantaged. So people who could afford to put in check valves and sump pumps from the last event they've done that, and their homes were protected. We are constantly looking for ways and means and resources that allow you to use public funds on private property. And there's a different public health issue here, and so we had conversations with legislators and other policymakers. The law was changed around lead service lines that require the utility to go on private property. Right? There's going to be funding in the infrastructure bill for that. On the flip side, what do you do to protect public health on the sewer side when you don't have a means to make those investments in private property? So those are conversations that are ongoing right now for us to understand if there are some ways or some policy changes or some language that can go into some of these bills that would allow for that type of convention. Because in all honesty, as Suzanne has said, we don't know what the next big storm is. We don't know what it is. And in all honesty, we'll never be able to design a system to that. So what are some other measures that can go in that provide private property protection, public health protection, but that also create room in the system, so to speak. And so we're going to keep pushing the envelope on that and trying to get changes in that language for the funding.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During this whole event, the only person I saw speaking for this issue was Director Brown. Director Brown is a board member of GLWA, but he's the director for GWST. So I did not see anyone from GLWA out there talking to customers and letting them know what was being done to try to solve or at least to make things easier for our customers. And years ago, we had a system that we could monitor when gates or whatever were not working properly. That showed up at our, I don't know what we're calling it now, but it was our facility, our wastewater and our water facility on Jefferson there, Farmers Park. And so I don't know were those factors, were those equipment, was that equipment working properly? Was it being monitored? And could we have taken steps sooner? Not necessarily to keep flooding from happening, but at least to minimize flooding.
Yes. So to speak on a few of those things, as it relates to response, yes, we definitely operate our SCADA system. So central is what we call our control center.
But it's monitored.
Yes. So we have that full-time staff, our facilities that operate the control system that monitor the flow both for the sanitary side and the water side was fully staffed, and they were monitoring the system and operating the entire regional system. In addition to that, our water resource recovery facilities, our bases, our treatment facilities were staffed, and so was the appropriate pump stations. The challenge with the external power issue is something that we have now corrected because there wasn't the appropriate monitoring equipment that was connected to our SCADA system. That never existed. That equipment never existed at that facility, but we have now incorporated that as a quick win to be able to monitor our power, outsourced power that comes into the facility, and we are arming when we find out that there is a power interruption, so we can quickly know and we can develop. In addition to that, we are developing strategies and communication for other member partners to be able to see within our SCADA system on specific assets, so that they know also, as much as we do, where water levels are rising quickly, they can inform their residents, or they can take the appropriate emergency measures that they have in communication with our team. So we are expanding our layers of communication and expanding our technology However, all the components within our access was available and ready to operate. Unfortunately, we didn't have the power to do so.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Okay, I like the idea of sharing information in real time, because clearly, and I appreciate what Deputy Director had mentioned about trying to find resources to deal with some of the infrastructure, personal infrastructure that's required inside residential homes. But at the end of the day, I think that there should be some main hub that comes into place where you immediately give real-time information to the customers along our system, so that they can be better prepared. That should be, I guess, expedited as a plan of action to make sure that the communities are getting as much information as necessary so that they can give as much advance notice and some sort of alert system. I know we talk about tornadoes, but right now we're dealing with just water. So there needs to be some sort of system similar to what we have for tornado warnings. And now we have texts and other type of platforms that we can utilize. But it consistently seems like people are being caught off guard when these water events happen, and they consistently having to spend money to replace items that in many instances, the insurance or FEMA and folks are not covering 100% of those costs.
So I think the challenge with the particular event, June 25th, and I say this all the time, and I don't, Thursday night, I was looking at the rain and the weather, and they were showing a prediction that Detroit may get 1 to 2 inches. The next day, my colleague Sam sent an email and said we need to prepare. It looks like we may get 3 to 5. I'm like, what did he watch? Like, what did he see? Because I didn't see the same report. I didn't see that. And so even the information that was sent out about what the event would be, the GLWA system controls and information to all the different partners. Hey, looks like it's going to be wet weather, even that prediction was not what we saw, right? Even the 3 to 5 Sam saw wasn't what we saw. So this also calls into question technology and technology's limited capability also to predict these weather events. And so that brings an interesting question to bear. How do you alert when you really kind of didn't know? Like maybe they do better. Let's say it's 10 o'clock in the evening on Friday, but 10 a.m. in the morning. That's not what it was predicted to be. So what's happening right now puts us on the edge of everything that we know and makes us fully aware of everything that we don't know.
Yes, and Chair, we all have these weather services that report to us on an hourly basis as to what to expect. And so this is what's being predicted right now as we through. There will be periodic chance for thunderstorms Friday, today, through Monday, as a moist, unstable air mass and frontal boundary lingers. Torrential rainfall is possible on Friday, today, as numerous storms develop before the warm front lifts north. And so it's 3:30 in the afternoon, and that information is being reported on the news. And you can imagine at 2 o'clock in the morning when that information is coming in. How are you going to alert people? Well, it was on the 10 o'clock news. It was on the 11 o'clock news. It's being reported as some type of weather warning or maybe a tornado warning or watch and I just want to say once, this event has taught us that we're all going to put in a new warning system to the community. It's being developed. We're going to get it in place. But there's a certain amount of personal responsibility that people are going to have to take when they get the information. And
they'll need to know what to do though.
Absolutely. But you certainly aren't going to put the family urn in the basement on the floor if you live in a flood zone. And the claims that I keep seeing in the same areas are people that absolutely know that their areas flood. So yes, we have to get better at making the notification, even if it's in the middle of the night. And we are developing systems as long as people will allow us to share email or a text similar to an app or that's coming, but there's still a certain level of residential responsibility that people have to take to protect. When we put the information out, disconnect your downspouts. Because right now, PWSD gives you a 25% discount on the drainage portion of your bill for disconnecting, whether you've done it or not. And I venture to guess 50% of the downspouts have not been disconnected. And so that amount of water. And so, yes, we're going to get better at getting the information out. We're looking for funding to be able to pay for check valves and sump pumps for those in our community that have an income issue and need that help. But traditionally, the federal government and the state government has not been willing to allow tax dollars to be spent on improving private property.
They want to pay through FEMA. They want to pay it.
Right, so the irony with the most recent individual assistance money that FEMA has more things that people can do with it, but it's not quite checked out. Some pumps yet, but maybe that will be in the next iteration. Maybe that will be in the next iteration of FEMA funding. And to my colleague's point and to Gary's point, the actual inches of rain, I mean, you might know 30 minutes before, maybe an hour before, when they have a tighter correlation on the prediction. But this is, we all joke about weatherman is never right. I mean, this is also showing you what we're limited to with our technological capabilities as well. So, we're lucky we weren't Tennessee. We're lucky we weren't China. But we know that we have a ways to go, and we're going to work diligently to figure out the best measures for public and private that allow us to protect people's public health.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Forte.
Yes, I wanted to lift up something that Commissioner Blackman referred, and I think Director Brown also mentioned, but I just want to be really direct. We also have to improve what we communicate to our constituents regarding how they need to react and how they need to prepare for these events. So that if everyone says there are going to be these events that surprise us within the hour of their occurrence, but we got to have something on our website, text, whatever forms our constituents use in terms of communication, quick communication. It's coming, and have you done these 3 things, the top 3 things, or the top 5 things? And then we're supposed to go into 10 we've already been. But, to me, there are only certain things we're going to protect against, and I think that there are going to be these events that people are going to have to be prepared for. And it's, and there's no savior coming. They're the savior. You're going to have to really get down in that, do those disconnections and down stuff, blah, 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 the top 3 things, so that they can just prepare and blah.
All right, Commissioner Blackman.
I'm going to save this until we further down on the comments from commissioners, but your deputy director, Valencia Mobley, was on a panel discussion that MAC, the Municipal Affairs Coalition, put together with other utilities and what their experience in the same thing we're experiencing, what they're planning to do. Now, many of them have more financial ability, or resources, I should say, to do these things, and it presents an added burden for many of our customers to do some of the things they're talking about. but it is not unique to us. And I think it will, the collaboration between all of the communities around working together and having the connections, several connections it has, to try to help us as well. I think it's going to yield some improvement in this area, but I just wanted to comment she did an excellent job, because her point was that these communities can do it financially, but we are putting an added burden on our customers if we try to implement some of the things we know will be helpful in the future. So we've got to find money from somewhere, and hopefully it's coming from the federal government.
Commissioners, any other comments or questions? All right.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And obviously, it's an issue that's going to continue to be a subject of our attention. Then let's move item 10D, under new business. Commissioner Hill.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of Commissioners for the City of Detroit Water and Sewage Department authorize the Director to approve change order number 4 to contract number 6001-600 WS7-708, repair of water main systems, various pipe sizes and various locations throughout the city of Detroit with major cement company to add $1 million for a total cost not to exceed amount of $9,602,800, and also authorizes the Director to take such other action as may be necessary to accomplish the intent of this vote.
Second.
It's been moved and it's been seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
And that motion is adopted. Next, item 210576. Commissioners? Commissioner Blackman.
Chairman of the Board of Water Commissioners of the City of Detroit Water and Sewage Department approves the professional service contract. Can't see, that's 6003835. Projects CS1962 between WSD and Mackinac Administrators LLC to administer claims for the June 25th, 26th, and July 16th rain events for 3 years, and a total contract amount not to exceed $3 million. And authorize the Director to take such other action as may be necessary to accomplish the intent of this vote.
Support.
It's been moved, it's been supported. Excuse me, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Aye. And the motion is adopted. Next, we come to the Director's measures.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll give the board an opportunity to go through the measures and make just a few comments that I think are germane. First of all, we tried to get out to you ahead of time the Health Department's new directive with regards to the Open Meetings Act. And as of September 1st, we will be back at virtual meetings as opposed to this hybrid model that we've attempted not very well. I apologize for that. Or these in-person meetings. So we're going to go, and that's the new order goes through December of 2021. And so we know that we're going to, the city of Detroit is at least expecting, according to the health director, and I did have a conversation with her. She believes that right now the state of Indiana is peaking, and it will move north into Michigan and into Detroit, and our numbers will start to peak. So it is just prudent at this point to go back to virtual meetings and take all the caution. So, I can't thank the staff at BWSD enough for the ones that are willing to get vaccinated and to wear masks indoors to protect themselves as well as others. I certainly encourage anyone that hasn't been vaccinated to look at science and consider getting vaccinated. It's my understanding that TCF Center right now is already giving booster shots to those that may be immune compromised. I can tell you that from reading the legislation that came out surrounding it, the federal government has been very liberal with that term, immune compromised. If you think that you're immune compromised, then it's my understanding that if you're a Detroiter, there's going to be no questions asked, and you're eligible to get the vaccine, the booster vaccine. And then as of September 20th, everyone that needs a booster will be eligible to get that TCF or other areas within the region that are getting out there. So we encourage people to take advantage of that so that we can get back to normal. Secondly, yeah.
Your clarification, are there a certain number of months you're supposed to wait before you get that booster?
The language is very liberal. They're suggesting 8 months pass, but the date is changing every day. I saw Johnson & Johnson come out and say there's a 6 month. And so I think the language was written very liberally to allow as many people to get a booster shot as quickly as possible. I can tell you, I was over at TCF and there were no lines. There were a lot of people. And so we got the vaccine. Let's try to get it into as many arms as people wanted. But yes, it was recommended 8 months after you received your second vaccine that you should. And so September 20th, people should be lining up to do that hopefully. With regards to cleaning and sanitizing of basements that were created for the most vulnerable of our community, seniors with either disabilities or children under 10. So far, we've gotten more than 350 homes completed. There's another 171 in progress. We hope to have completed by the first of the month or shortly thereafter, and then that project should wrap up. So I spoke earlier today about the fact that the city of Detroit's already received $58 million in checks, residents by FEMA, another $33 million in loans, additional loans. That's not including what's going on in the region. And so we spoke earlier that, well, at least I was speaking to some of my team members earlier that, they've already spent $100 million, and for half of that, if they would just fund, replace, check valves, some homes, as opposed to spending $100 million, we know 5 times as much money was probably damaged. It would be a good investment. So we're going to do a cost analysis and try to convince the leaders of Washington and the state level that this is a good investment. Stop coming here and paying on the back end and invest on the front end. And just because it's private property, it's still low income residents that are in those properties. So we'll continue to work on that.
So are they recommending, is there something in the future for customers to be able to get this up, and are they explaining to customers, how are we explaining to customers how some pumps would benefit them?
Yeah, the mayor in charge of DWSD, we're going and finding the funding. We haven't found it yet. We are certainly working with lobbyists as well as looking at some of the ARP money that is coming down the pipe to see if the real problem right now is that we know that we're going to get dollars for infrastructure, we'll get dollars for replacement of lead service lines, we're hoping to get dollars for affordability issues in terms of our live block program. but we don't know what restrictions are going to be on the ballots to be able to put together the communication, or put together the program. So we're still like everybody else in the country waiting for these infrastructure bills to be finalized so that we can see what the details of them are and then we can shape a program around them. And then we can build the communication. But your point is really noted. It's going to be very important to communicate this message to our customers so that they can take advantage of the program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, any questions for Director Brown or comments with regard to his report? Then are there any comments by commissioners? In terms of comments by, yes, Commissioner Love.
I think we made them all.
Well, I have something to say. I've been thinking about this a lot. I probably should have said this before our colleagues from Great Lakes left. But part of geopolitical history has been whether or not water services should be regionalized. And there's a very strong push from our friends in the suburbs saying that for a lot of reasons, sometimes a presumption that Detroiters weren't up to operating the system, sometimes questions of political control. There has been pressure to set up a regional system. A number of people, and the Mayor Young particularly comes to mind, warned against it and said that the moment we regionalize, Detroiters will be screwed. He didn't use the word screwed. What we're seeing today is a failure of either equipment or people. Maybe it's an act of God in terms of that rain event, but what happened disproportionately hurt Detroiters. And we obviously take no delight in other communities experiencing sewer damage, but what happened disproportionately harmed Detroiters. So I take the comments that were made about the seriousness that Great Lakes is putting, I take those at face value, and I hope the political leadership who appoint the other members of the Great Lakes Board realize how badly this incident hurt Detroiters. Hopefully we move from there. All right, is there any other business? Wait. We have a closed session? There is other business, all right. Let's move on to an appropriate motion with regard to going into closed session.
And Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Kinlaw.
yes, upon the request of the Chief General Counsel, Deborah Postreach, Esquire, the Board of Water Commissioners votes to, I move that the Board of Water Commissioner meet in closed session with our General Counsel pursuant to Section 8H of the Open Meetings Act to discuss a confidential attorney communication.